pleasure to invite the first speaker for the proposition team to open the debate. Please welcome.
The House. There is a clear difference between quality education and risky education. Side proposition of today's argument believes strongly that we live in a world where certain institutions are forbidding the education for all policy. We live in a world where developed countries of the world that are standard in terms of education and development, and so they're doing away with for-profit universities because they're seeing that it is hampering on education. For instance, the United States of America that in 2012 banned over 200 for-profit schools, and in 2013 banned 85 Corinthian colleges. Therefore, the side governments of today's argument are saying that such radical approach should be brought into this issue all over the world in order to do away with institutions that provide exorbitant but risky education. And it is for this reason that we support today's motion. The stance of the side proposition in today's debate is that for-profit universities and colleges over-commercialize education and defeat the purpose for which higher institutions are set up. Hence, they should be banned. And in buttressing this stance, Mr. Chair, I, as the first speaker, will give the House the legitimacy of the model which we're going to bring up in today's debate. My first speaker will have to tell the House the pragmatic benefits this House will gain in banning for-profit universities and colleges. Now, the pertinent question in today's debate is what type of ban do we actually mean in today's debate? Now, side proposition on today's argument believes strongly that when the government take over these for-profit universities and colleges, run them like public universities, pay off their owners, and then take them and then don't allow private individuals to establish these universities, they have actually banned it. And this has led us to the model in today's debate, where we see that first, that governments in different countries of the world should bring about a change of system in for-profit universities. They should own these for-profit universities, run them like public universities, pay off their owners, and not allow private individuals to establish such. Secondly, side governments of today's debate will improve accessibility to these for-profit universities that would not be owned by the government. And this would be done when the government would employ more competent staff and then invest more in education. We are also going to hold an examination in order to rate the competence of most of the teachers and most of the staff in these for-profit universities. Now, when we rate it, the more competent ones should be retained by the government, and those of them who are less competent should be put in different positions, wherein their qualification and their competence suits. We believe that in doing this, members of the House, no stakeholder in today's debate would be at loss. Now we get into the case of the side proposition. We under the legitimacy why we believe that our model is right and workable. First, we talk about the limits of rights and freedom. Mr. Chair, your right ends when it starts violating of the rights of others. Now, this particular argument will be addressed with the House principle as propounded by John Stanton, which states that it is justified for government to the extent of sabotaging people's freedom, it is justified for government to sabotage people's freedom if it will protect someone from harm directly or some other person from harm indirectly. Now, side proposition of today's debate observe and understand the fact that different institutions, for-profit institutions, have the right to exist, and people also have the right to decide which institution for them to go into and receive education. But then we see that this right to choice, there is need to limit this right to choice, since it is causing several harms to society. Your point of information.
For-profit universities can train competent staff because of the profits they have. How are governments able to do so on your side of the House?
Thank you very much for your points of information. Now, members of the House, in response to that, I would like to remind side opposition to this debate that developed countries of the world, countries that are very high in development, like the United Kingdom, like Germany, have a great majority of public universities, and that's they're doing away with for-profit universities and colleges, showing that that point of information of theirs is not recommended for today's debate. In furtherance of our argument, what are these harms which we've actually identified in for-profit universities and colleges? First, we talk of economic inequality. Mr. Chair, for-profit universities and colleges have brought about great disparity between the rich and the poor. Because of the need for them to provide dividends to their shareholders, they go on increasing costs, which has reflected in the cost of school fees. And that is why we see that according to Forbes magazine, on 28 February 2017, a 4-year for-profit university program costs on an average $325 for public universities, and then the same program would cost $647 in for-profit universities. And the cheapest for-profit university would pay $38,640 yearly, more than public universities and private non-profits. Now let us consider the effects of this. The direct effect would be that the rich will then have the opportunity to go into for-profit universities, and the poor would not have the opportunity. Side governments of today's argument are not saying that the poor cannot just go get into for-profit. They can do this by accessing loans from the government in order to get into for-profit, and that leads us to the next harm, which is increase in loan default and school dropout rate. Mr. Chair, when the poor ones in the society go on accessing loans and then get into for-profit, we discover that at the end As such, US Senator Tom Harkin, chairman for the Health, Education, Labor and Pension Committee Health, said that he discovered 60% of students who enrolled in US for profit in 2012 ended up leaving the university in mid-2014. Why? Because of increased rate of school fees. Members of the House, it is for the reason to protect such hands that we support panel of educators that for-profit universities be banned. In our second line of argument, we talk of the role of the government. Mr. Chair, it is the sole responsibility of the government to provide facilitative and qualitative education to all masses, free of charge, or at least at the lowest possible cost, such that it will accommodate even the lowest class of the society. Now, the government cannot go on carrying all these roles, whereas we have universities that place costs are so exorbitant to level that the poor ones in the society can't be accommodated. Now, what we're saying in today's debate is that if the government can succeed in these roles, in the midst of diverse harms, also from for-profit universities, ranging from economic inequality, high cost of school fees, high loan default rate, poor graduation rate, should the government be expected to keep quiet? Any government that should keep quiet, that will be classified by side government as an unpopular government. Therefore, for the government to come up to this responsibility to stand up to bring about qualitative and facilitative education for all, side government will support a ban on for-profit universities and colleges. In our next line of arguments, members of the House, we talk of consent. Mr. Chair, any decision that is made without informed choice is an irrational decision. We also believe that any decision that is not made voluntarily is also an irrational decision. We've discovered, Mr. Chair, that for-profit universities and colleges, they will go on spending so much on adverts. And then the problem we have with this advert is that these adverts are deceitful. Hence, they go on painting pictures of what for-profit universities cannot do as well. Now, another problem we have with this is that most for-profit universities and colleges confuse their names with public ones. Hence, most people get into these universities and at the end of the day start regretting it because that was not actually the university they wanted to get into. For instance, we have the American University, a private non-profit, and also we have American Public University, a for-profit university. Now we have the University of Southern California, a non-profit, and the Southern California University, a for-profit. You see all these confusing names being a strategy for them to get in more students deceitfully. And this is exactly what side government gets in today's debate. We support that the right to freedom of consent by these people are supported, and then when the citizens cannot make informed choices, for-profit universities should be banned. What have we been able to tell this House in today's debate? We gave you our stance where we told the House that for-profits over-commercialize education and defeat the purpose for which higher institutions are set up. And we went on to give you our model where we told you that we should ban these for-profits by changing the system. The government should take it over and run it as public universities, and then the owners paid off, and individuals cannot be allowed to set up these universities. We are also going to improve accessibility and bring about rating of competence of workers, where the competent ones will be retained and then the less competent ones will be placed in positions such that no stakeholder will be losing. Now we prove to this House that there is need for us to limit the freedom, the right and freedom of people, especially when it's causing harm to society. We also prove to the House that there is need for the state to come up to its responsibility in providing qualitative and facilitative education. Finally, we prove that there is need to protect the right consent of people. We are proudly government. Thank you.
The first proposition speaker spent 8 minutes, 5 seconds.
I thank the first proposition speaker for their speech. And now, to open the case for the opposition, I call upon Jonathan Yeo.
Members of this House, this debate is about the thousands of qualified applicants who cannot walk through the gates of oversubscribed non-profit colleges. Like you and me, they yearn for a better life. Team Proposition has no right to deny them this pursuit just because there aren't enough opportunities to go around. Before we get into our case, some preliminary observations. Because Team Proposition's strategy is to give you a laundry list of like some form of the event. They say there are high defaults, they say it's high cost. The problem with a ban is that it's incredibly blunt and absolute with dealing with these problems. A few bad universities do not warrant a ban. Proposition have failed to prove two things. One, why these problems are inherent to for-profits, and two, why all other mechanisms to regulate them have failed. They have not fulfilled their majority burden. And in some senses, they do concede, because to the extent they claim the United States banned for-profit universities, they did not. They regulated it, because under Obama's administration, they implemented for more strict income ratios that ensured we regulated the for-profit universities. Their track record proves our case. In this sense, they need to engage the wider context of this debate. What's our policy? One, for-profit universities will operate under the same rules that apply to all educational institutions. They will register with the Education Ministry, which will review their accreditation, ensure basic qualifications, and audit them for fraud. Two, under basic transparency laws, schools will publish former students' employment rates, salaries, and income ratios. Third, we stand for expanding subsidies for all college students. Our policy has seen a track record of success. In South Africa, the for-profit, hold on a moment ma'am, Standard University has regularly dominated school rankings since the 1990s. Conversely, in Canada, there are over 200 for-profits that provide high-quality curriculum developed by industry experts. Before I move on to my rebuttals, yes?
Please, sir, you told the House that we should take on subsidies and subsidize them because of for-profit universities and colleges. Now remember that most governments go on giving grants to these universities not to reduce costs, and this has helped, and this hasn't helped the situation. So what do you tell the House about it?
We think that student debt isn't that much of a problem, as I will prove in my rebuttals. I'll flag that out for you. Nonetheless, we have three arguments. One, probably improve access to education. Two, probably improve the quality of education. Third, probably improve the educational landscape. Before that, several rebuttals. One, is a ban justified? The main principle thrust coming from Team Proposition is that choice is never absolute, and the choice to join a for-profit is somewhat coerced. They claim there are high school fees and there are predatory behaviors. Now, we don't think that such for-profits are going to be predatory. In today's climate where consumers are incredibly skeptical, if a college ever gains a reputation akin to Trump University, where they do charge students very high costs, their name will go down the drain. And mind you, the capacity to name and shame online is deadly. Think about it. If you're involved in an advertisement scandal where a student blows the whistle about your understaffed, subpar course, this damages your reputation and hurts your bottom line. Honestly, who in the right mind will attend your college if they know it has a track record of predatory behavior? I don't think that's much of a problem. Last, they claim there's economic inequality. But the problem here is that they assume there's an incentive to charge them. As I've proven, there is no incentive on the part of for-profits to charge them that high price. Loss on college debt. Now, we don't think college debt is that much of an issue. Why? Because to even have a market to begin with, for-profits must be affordable. They have to cater to less wealthy demographics with appropriate prices. This, mind you, is particularly so in the developing world, a context they never engage in, where many believe that the high cost of a university education is not warranted. To convince families that they ought to go for an education, for-profits must price themselves cheaper. We see this all across the world in the Bangladesh University, for instance, which uses a broad-based pyramid system, which charges richer students a premium to cross-subsidize poorer students. Second, on whether for-profits are generally good. Now, we agree that the government has a duty. On opposition, we think that duty is to provide as many choices for individuals. That is why when they say there are predatory advertisements, this is false. Even if there are, we think it's legitimate for the poor to access this choice despite some form of inequality existing. Why? Because the poor can make decisions based on their own economic circumstances. They intimately understand their current state and they ought to be able to make it. It is not within proposition's limit to make this choice on behalf of them. Before I move on, yes?
I try to tell the House that the poor ones in the society cannot access education due to these for-profit universities and colleges.
No, what we are saying is that for-profits provide an accessible opportunity for those left behind by the current system to access education. My first argument that for-profit colleges improve access to education. This argument will show you that for-profit colleges provide students with access to higher education where no alternatives exist. Premise: university degrees today are a necessity. In the developed world, degrees are prerequisites for employment because humans compete with millions of other degree holders. In London alone, 60% of all jobs require a university degree. This is because degrees will remain the clearest signal for employers to differentiate between many applicants and their abilities. Now, non-profit colleges alone cannot accommodate all these students for two reasons. One, because there are insufficient resources. In a world of high government austerity
Point of
and
inflation.
no thank you, even places like Great Britain have half higher education funding since 2012. Meanwhile, right-wing politicians like Betsy DeVos have scaled down upward-bound grants for universities to prepare academically weaker students. Unlike the rich, it is the poor, it is the middle class who are left in the lurch. For-profits do not rely on the same state budgets and are hence immune to the whims of political uncertainty. For instance, the public law colleges in California have lost $2 billion in funding, forcing a decrease in student intake. In contrast, it has been for-profits like the Charlotte School of Law that have failed in this void. 2. Non-profit colleges neglect disadvantaged communities. They craft courses presuming most students have requisite knowledge, as most are high school graduates. Comparatively, those left out, like veterans and minorities, are catered to by for-profits since they constitute a valuable niche market. For instance, the University of Phoenix offers evening classes and flexible start times across the year. The reason why they can afford such lesson structures is because their accumulated profits can cover such high costs. We are better, because in New York City alone, for-profits produce a fifth of all associate degrees, equipping veterans and single mothers with skills such as accounting and business management. This empowers them to set up their own enterprises and make a living for themselves. It is for-profits that help the poor escape poverty. Second argument, that for-profits improve the quality of education. In this argument, we will demonstrate that for-profits are better funded and more nimble at responding to economic trends, benefiting students. For-profits have two structural incentives to provide high-quality education. 1. They resurrect failed universities. For-profit colleges frequently purchase underperforming public colleges, revitalizing an industry where the lifespan of non-profits are erratic. Moreover, their huge capital secures a caliber of education far better than small community colleges as they can access quality resources. We saw this when Bridge Post Education brought over the Colorado School of Professional Psychology. Today, it has been transformed into the University of the Rockies, which receives top-tier accreditation for their psychology degree. This is crucial because often entire communities depend on the one or two colleges in their region for economic upliftment. 2. For-profits actively innovate. They are particularly nimble at responding to market changes because operators come from the private market. This might reduce the proposition's characterization that these are individuals who are only profit-seeking because these universities are investments into the future of their own industries. In contrast, public colleges are tied to rigid state fronts and cannot take risks on taxpayer dollars. For instance, Strayer University in Virginia offers curricula tailor-made in collaboration with 300 of the Fortune 500 companies. Furthermore, innovation always involves some form of financial risk. Accumulated profits give for-profit universities the safety net to take short-term risks compared to non-profits that are treading an already thin line. Hence, for-profit universities provide more well-funded and adaptable education, offering students a vital gateway to their success. On opposition, that is why we stand by the base principle that we should not place limits on the means to your dreams. We oppose.
The first opposition speaker spent 7 minutes 59 seconds.
thank the first opposition speaker for their speech. And now, to continue the case for the proposition, I call upon Dorji Chiagose Namdi.
Panel of adjudicators, members of the House. The stance of side proposition in today's debate still remains that for-profit universities and colleges over-commercialize education and defeat the main purpose and principle of education in higher institutions. The major problem side opposition pointed out in today's debate is that there is lack of accessibility in government institutions, where they told us that thousands of qualified students in the world can't gain access into these non-profit institutions, and that is why the for-profit institutions are there in the first place, to accommodate these people. But this has been handled in our model in the first place, because we told you, with government expansion, the government is going to fuse more, inject more money into the public institutions we have, or the non-profit institutions, to make sure that they facilitate the schools, employ more qualified staff, and through this, we believe that we can accommodate more students. People who are supposed to go to for-profit universities and colleges in the first place, we're now going to absorb them in non-profit universities and colleges by banning these other universities that are for-profit oriented. Having known this, we believe the problem is already handled by our model in today's debate. Now, they tried to counter the issue of adverts, where they told us that these universities who are profit-oriented should go for adverts for the purpose of their reputation. But ladies and gentlemen, what the problem we point out from this particular thing is that when you inject more money towards advertising the university, of course they have to do that because this is profit-oriented and owned individually. But the problem with this is, when they use more money to do this, what are they going to leave for standard of education? Because we believe that for one single television advert, you're going to spend thousands of dollars. Now, we believe that this is going to depreciate the standard of education for the students who go to such schools. For this particular reason, that argument does not hold. Then they told us that there are things we're supposed to prove in this debate which we have not proven. They told us whether the regulations of for-profit universities have failed in the first place. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, they have failed. And the reason is because, for example, in the United States, we see a decline of the number of for-profit universities and colleges we see in the United States over the years, from 3,000 plus to 187 earlier this year, as reported by Non-Profit Colleges Research 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, if the regulations aren't failing, then the opposition should tell the House why there is a recent decline in the number of such universities we have in the United States. Germany, for example, does not have for-profit universities, and their standard of education is on the increase. So, ladies and gentlemen, why should we not ban for-profit universities and colleges? The major arguments arising in today's debate is issue of access and quality of education coming from side opposition. But on the access, we already told you that government has to use more money, inject more money, employ better staff, and then try to facilitate the whole school in expansion. And through this, we're going to accommodate more students. Those people that are supposed to go to for-profit universities and colleges, since we've banned these institutions, they will have that accessibility in the non-profit institutions. This particular argument is already handled by our model, and that does not stand in the side of opposition. Then another argument coming from their side is the quality of the education, where they told us that for-profit universities have a very high quality of education. Ladies and gentlemen, this is actually problematic. What is the reason? The perception of society is that people that go to for-profit universities and colleges are not employable in the workforce of the country. The reason is because the standard of education is not good. So they should tell us why people who went to for-profit universities and colleges are rejected all over the world, as reported with facts. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that this is the reason why we believe that the standard of education in for-profit universities and colleges is something we do not appreciate, and for that reason, we should ban for-profit universities and colleges. Now, what are the things we gave you on side proposition? We looked at the legitimacy, which they have failed to address in today's debate. All the responses they gave us are not considerable. The reason is because the limit of rights to gain, that is right to choice, should be limited if it actually causes harm to society. So we think that if these people have the right to go to for-profit universities, and then, invariably, these institutions do not work with the principles of education in the first place, we have the right to ban such institutions. That is why government is legitimate. We address this with the harms principle, as said by my lead speaker in today's debate. The other thing is the role of the government. When the government sees that these institutions are not working in line with the principle of education, and again, they're not offering quality education, they even go to the extent of selling certificates to individuals because they are profit-oriented. So they are profit-oriented, so they can sell certificates to individuals individuals who just want to gain certificates and not go to school. So we believe that these are the harms, and also more appointed by my speaker, we believe that these are the reasons why we think government is legitimate to ban for-profit investment. Can I have that?
Why are excessive advertising budgets unique to for-profit universities?
Thank you so much. This is unique to them because government institutions are actually known because this is the government owning them. These are institutions that are very popular in a particular state. But when I as an individual establish an institution, how do you expect people far and wide to know that I actually established an institution? Now, this is unique to this kind of institutions because this is private ownership. So they need to tell the world that a person actually established something, established a school like this. This is why excessive advertisement is actually peculiar to this kind of institutions. Thank you so much. Now, moving on to what I have for the House in today's debate. I'm going to tell you the pragmatic benefits we're going to gain if we actually ban for-profit universities. The first thing is expansion of access to education. In the first place, we told you that these for-profit universities draws a margin between the rich and the poor because the poor people cannot access such universities due to high costs. This is something they fail to prove in today's debate, ladies and gentlemen, panel of adjudicators. But we tell you that when government takes over, like we said in our model, the government is going to inject more money, facilitate the schools, employ better and more staff that will handle the students. So we believe we are giving better accessibility and accommodation more than the side opposition. And for this reason, we believe proposition has a debate. The second thing I'm going to tell you is why we safeguard the future of children in the first place. We believe that the issue of unemployability in the society, like I've proven to you, these people that go to for-profit universities and colleges are not actually employed throughout the world because the perception of society is that these schools are not of standard. So what the model of side proposition will do for you in today's debate is that the government will act. Thank you so much. What we're going to do to you by banning for-profit universities and colleges, we're actually going to safeguard the future of these children. So you don't have to go to a school where you finish and then you cannot be employed in the workforce. What is then the essence of going to for-profit universities and colleges? Side opposition should prove that in today's debate. But when the government comes in and owns this institution, you find out that the quality of education will increase. And when this happens, employability of these people that go to school will be assured in society. So we believe side proposition offers you more benefits than side opposition. And for that particular reason, we should have this debate. The next thing I'm going to tell you is about how for-profit universities do some illegal things like giving unmerited certificates to people. To justify this, these for-profit universities and colleges are privately owned, and since they are privately owned, they are profit-oriented. So as an individual, I want to gain profit from something that I established. So they go to the extent of selling certificates to people who did not even attend school. So ladies and gentlemen, this is actually causing problems in the society because who will you employ? Somebody that did not go to school but has a certificate. This is actually problematic for the workforce of a country. So we believe that our stand in this debate is better for the world. Why? Because the government must give you certificates when you go to school, and that is the only justification we have for this particular argument. And for the fact that for-profit universities go through some illegal actions just because they are profit-oriented, we believe they have no right to exist. And for this reason, opposition should not be considered in today's debate. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, what we've been able to tell you is that first, profit-oriented universities and colleges are not best for the society because the standard of education is very low, and then issue of accessibility is very poor because the poor cannot access this education. So the clash of the debate is that we give you more accessibility than opposition, and we offer better quality of education than opposition. For this particular reason, I proudly propose.
The second proposition speaker spent 8 minutes, 1 second.
So I thank the second proposition speaker for their speech. And now to continue the case for the opposition, I call upon Ryan Wee.
Affirmative's case is premised on a very naive faith in the power of the government and the success of their model. Their model of expanding universities does not deal with the structural trends observed in my first speaker, of how along the developed world there are cuts in education budgets. There is austerity. Betsy DeVos is slashing budgets for education. In Colorado, decreasing funding for state community colleges means that classes are now held outdoors and in overcrowded staff rooms. That is a reality of state education. And also, they need to realize that this debate also happens in developing countries where governments do not have the money to just expand universities at will. So, I want the next speaker to answer this question. In the case where public universities and non-profits simply cannot cater to the number of people who need a degree, are they willing to stand there and say they would deny these individuals a degree and not give them the option of going to a for-profit university that will help them access a better life? We don't think that's right. Two questions. One, do for-profits exploit students? Two, do they improve access to quality education? One, on exploiting students. So, Team Affirmative gives us a very messy list of ways in which some for-profit universities might be harmful. So, high costs, loan defaults, advertising, and just handing out certificates randomly. I want to note that this assumption that they exploit students undergirds all their cases about their principle and also their second speaker's sub. Because the idea of handing out certificates and therefore safeguarding the future of education, the idea about how they will harm the economy, all is premised on the idea of them being exploitative. Furthermore, their principle on choice and over-commercializing education is also premised on this exploitative nature, because we can agree that governments should restrict choice sometimes. They need to prove that this is an instance where there is so much harm as to intervene on choice. What were my first speaker's responses? We told you how observing that there are a few bad apples is not enough to win this debate. They need to prove the majority burden. That is to say, they must prove that there are intrinsic characteristics that apply to most for-profits. That is not true. We told you about the profit motive, how the structural reason of not wanting to have a bad reputation means that this simply won't happen. We live in an era of social media, where stories can go viral, where if you post a post complaining about a university, the university's name can be plastered all over the news within 24 hours. This is why, if you are involved in an advertising scandal, if you are involved in a scandal about just randomly handing out certificates without actually having students, if you are involved in a scandal where you have low quality degrees that get rejected by employers, all of this will just result in you not having students, because students are discerning. And honestly, it is demeaning for them to say that students cannot choose for themselves and decide which university is better for them. Therefore, we think the logic about school dropouts also doesn't work. They said, oh, but there's a huge advertising budget, so therefore there must be a decrease in quality. Why is this exclusive to for-profit universities? The fact is that if you set up a small state college, it will also be pretty unknown, and therefore you also need to donate a lot of money to advertising that use it. So this is not exclusive to for-profit university. They talked about high costs, but they did not respond to my first speaker's analysis. No, thank you, ma'am, on how the price of the product is above what people can afford, then demand simply falls. Particularly when we look at the demographics of who for-profit universities cater to. Oftentimes poorer individuals, people from minority communities. These people tend not to traditionally go to university, and therefore they will only decide to go to university if the cost is low enough to make it worth it. Their argument about loans and defaults was already dealt with by my first speaker, but we told you how, for example, many governments do things like restructure loans. And furthermore, I would suggest that having a degree and a job and some loans is better than having no loans but no degree and no job. Furthermore, they failed to deal with our analysis about regulation. They said, oh, but it has caused a decline in the number of for-profit universities. Yes, that might be what regulation does, but that doesn't mean that we are banning it, because that means that we can simply cut out those that are not good and leave those that are good for students through regulation. So that point does not stand. Before I move on, yes.
Please, sir, from your former argument, are you trying to tell this House that we are going to abandon what is the real function of an educational institution going on advertisements or spending more on the students?
Oh man, we believe that it is legitimate for them to spend some money on advertisements if they believe that is the way to get more students. But we do not think it will be a disproportionate amount, because as I already said, we have an incentive to ensure there's a high quality of education. So there was a very clear point I was making. So we can stand for regulation and we can stand for the profit motive. We think that means they do not exploit students. Second question, do they improve the access to quality education? So they said they have governments expanding universities. I think we already told you that's not sustainable. And they have to deal with our ground of how in many countries there are simply not enough places. So I would suggest that on our side, we allow many of these non-traditional demographics to have access to a degree that they need to get a better life, that they need to break out of poverty, to get a job that allows them to support their family. I think that's important and they have no alternatives. So I want the next speaker to tell us what is that alternative to the millions of people who do not have access to a degree and general economic upliftment. We think for-profit universities are the solution, even if they're not perfect. We think that we told you the profit motives means they will at least provide a degree that is sustainable and gets you to the job market. And otherwise, there is nothing to help these individuals. So, we help these individuals access education. My argument for today, that we improve the quality of the educational landscape. Before I move on, yes?
Please, sir, do we consider accessibility to education or the quality of education?
And we believe that we fulfill both criteria. We have quality education that allows more people to access it. I've just told you why both of this is true, so that was my rebuttals. I've already dealt with that. So my argument, for-profit universities don't exist in a vacuum. This argument will prove that they also engage in positive competition with their non-profit counterparts, improving the entire education industry as a whole. What non-profit colleges lack in the word of team affirmative? Many non-profit colleges, government-run colleges like they stand for, like the State University of New York, are run by seniority-based tenure systems, which means they are often caught up with frameworks from the 1950s. Two, many non-profit state-run, like they said, colleges like the University of California are run by powerful alumni governing bodies, which pressure these universities to stick to tradition. What does this mean? This means that many of the government-run colleges that they stand for in their models, so I'm taking them on their highest ground, simply are obsessed with tradition and don't adapt to the modern world. This is why huge non-profit colleges like Cambridge continue to devote way too much funding to studying the classics when this is not what the modern economy needs. How does the existence of for-profit universities change this? We told you in my first speaker, and this was not rebutted in their speaker, of how for-profit universities have both an ability and an incentive to adapt and evolve. We talked about innovation, how they have the money to enroll in niche programs, to create new courses that adapt to the economy. They did not respond to that, so we can assume that this is a basic premise that is true. Therefore, they engage in competition and pioneer new curricula, framework, and teaching methods. This creates a best practices environment that improves the holistic quality of the educational landscape. Why is competition the only way? Competition is the strongest mechanism for any university to improve. It is the one unavoidable characteristic of the environment that no organization and corporate organization can ever escape from. Therefore, when for-profit universities raise the standard of education as a whole, non-profit colleges have to respond to prevent their students from being poached by these for-profit universities. Even if they start out by catering to a niche market, when many for-profit universities expand, this results in them catering to certain people that non-profit colleges want, and therefore non-profit colleges have to improve to continue retaining students. This is not speculative. Already, massive open online courses were pioneered by for-profit universities like Spear University in Virginia, which use it to help part-time students access courses. In response, many non-profit colleges, state-run colleges, like the University of Melbourne, have been forced to similarly establish MOOCs and distance learning as a response. So, we improve the holistic quality of education, which is why we stood by the base principle that we should not place limits on the means to your dreams. We oppose.
The second opposition speaker spent 8 minutes 9 seconds.
thank the second opposition speaker for their speech. And now to continue the case for the proposition, I call upon Eze Blessing Obianuju.
Mr. Chair, there is a clear misconception of this motion by side opposition from the arguments of side opposition. Now, we tell this House that our system of ban is not going to be that we are going to eliminate for-profit universities and colleges, but our system of ban is that we are going to modify them by ensuring that government take over and improve the situation. That is to say that the case of accessibility that has continually been hammered upon by side opposition can't hold in today's argument. Since these universities and colleges will still exist, but we are going to reduce the issue of cost and quality education by bringing government to serve as the major actor in this issue. And for that, side opposition has no case in today's argument. Mr. Chair, I'm going to be reporting effectively the issues of side opposition, and I'm going to be addressing the issues that have arisen in the course of today's argument. Now over to the report house. Starting from the counter model provided by side opposition. Side opposition said they were going to ensure that for profit institutions we operate on the same rules applicable for schools. But we make them understand that this issue is applicable to all countries of the world, both developed and developing countries. And in the issue of developing countries, we see a situation whereby this government will not be able to handle this situation. And also, in developed countries of the world, the issue of making the schools to apply to the same rules have also failed. Let us take an issue of what is obtainable in South Korea. Last year in South Korea, the president tried to ensure that these for-profit institutions should make the same rules and operate on the same standards with non-profit institutions. But after 3 months, there was a clear failure in the application of those rules, which is to say that it is practically impossible to control these for-profit institutions to apply by the same rules that are being done by the government-owned institutions. They also said in their model that they are going to provide subsidies for students to ensure that there will be a reduction in the case of cost. We see that as a misconception because my first speaker earlier said that the subsidies that are being provided by the government go down or get exhausted at the cost of these students being engaged in for-profit institutions because the cost increase on daily basis. As a result of this, even with the provision of these subsidies, these people won't be able to meet up with the cost, and this subsidy can solve the issue. Now, the third issue on their model is that they're going to register these education bodies to ensure accreditation by qualified educational bodies. Now, on the issue of accreditation, we still plan of educators that the institution of accreditation is that anyone who wants to open a school brings a certificate or a file containing what the individual wants to do. There is no clear access as to the environment that is provided by study. So even if there is a clear accreditation, it does not justify that these individuals are going to provide quality education. As a result of this, accreditation cannot stop the issue of low standard of education. Now, the third issue on that policy is that they are going to employ qualified teachers. Now, members of the House, we feel that said proposition provides a better case for the employment of qualified teachers if government take over, because government is richer, government is more sensitive to the needs of the people, and individuals are poorer and less sensitive to the needs of the people. So the employment of these teachers is not going to hold in their own line. Now, we're made to answer so many questions. First, they ask us, does government have the money to fund education? Now, said opposition tried to argue that this profit made by the individuals make them better accessible to the employment of teachers and to fund education. But in response to that, we tell you that the profit that is made by these people is not meant to fund the education. They use it to settle the shareholders in these institutions and also for personal benefits. As a result of this, no government is richer than an individual, and this also, government has no shareholder to settle. As a result of this, it provides better opportunity for them to fund the education more than any private individual can do. Now, the second question we are coming to answer is in situations where government cannot accommodate the students, do we opt in to deny students their certificate? Panel of educators, that is the issue we have answered by telling you that we will be able to accommodate them. Since we are not completely eliminating the schools, it is still going to be in existence, but it's going to be an improvement. And even if there is going to be lack of accommodation, we said opposition provides that government will not be able to accommodate these people. How much more the private individuals? As a result of this, these students will not be denied their certificates, but that they will even get more quality certificates as a result of the improvements that will be done. Now, the final question we asked to answer is, does for-profit institutions exploit students? Members of the House, we see the case of for-profit institutions as a clear exploitation, telling this House that for-profit institutions engage in false advertisements. As a result of this, individuals opt into these universities to be exploited, and these people are meant to pay more than what they get. Let us take an instance of what is obtainable in countries like Germany and South Korea or African countries where there is high rates of for-profit institutions. We see that those individuals that have non-profit institutions are better qualified in terms of education. And there's a low exploitation or low payment of students. So the high cost of these for-profit institutions is what we see as an exploitation, since it does not in turn offer education quality qualification offered by non-profit institutions. Now, the final question we are going to answer is, does the excessiveness of high-profit institutions hinder quality education? We say a big yes to that. That individuals are made to pay high money, and also these individuals are made to engage in excessive advertisement. It hinders education because the money that is supposed to use to develop infrastructure and to employ people is being channeled to advertisement and is being channeled to the settlement of shareholders. As a result of this, their excessiveness hinders the quality of education. Your point, sir? Mr. Chair, having addressed the issues of tight opposition, I move ahead to answer.
Information. Can you give me one reason why governments can take over a for-profit university when it can't even run its own state colleges?
Members of the House, it is a false argument to say that governments have not been able to run their own institutions. Now let us take a case study of Germany. Germany is a system of government that has a complete elimination of for-profit institutions, which is to say that government takes responsibility of the running of these colleges. And in such situations, we see that the standard of education in Germany is higher than what is obtainable in such systems of governments like Nigeria, like Ghana, where for-profit institutions are predominant. Now, in this situation, it gives a clear evidence that government is capable of operating and controlling education more than any individual in the system, which is to say that governments have been able to assault, to tender, to respond to educational issues, which is a false argument side opposition is bringing up. Now, in addressing the questions that are written in today's argument, the first question is, among the two teams, whose action is more legitimate? Now, side opposition is saying that they are going to allow freedom of choice based on the economic status of those people. Side opposition is saying that they are going to ban this decision based on the fact that individuals have the right to be protected by government, based on the fact that the major opportunity or the major job of the government is to provide education and security. We feel that our own action is more legitimate since there is a protection of the people and since there is an accretion of the action. Now, on the side of economic status, we also see that there is an overburden of the government because they are going to provide subsidies, as they have earlier said, which is to say that this choice will not also be made according to economic status. The individuals are going to in turn overburden the government, which is to remedy such situations. It is practically better that we make it crystal clear that the government takes over these situations. Hence, their freedom on economic status can hold, and our legitimacy still holds. Now, on our legitimacy also, we told you that our legitimacy is satisfied by the fact that individuals have concerns. Aside from the fact that they are being deceived by these institutions, we also feel that they are being forced to make these decisions based on social pressure. As a result of this, the concept of these people are being hindered. The second question is, which provide quality education for the society? Side opposition provides quality education because with the power of these institutions and government acquiring it, we are going to provide more teachers, we are going to provide more infrastructures, we are going to reduce the cost. As a result of this, more people are going to be involved in the education of the society, more government is going to be channeling more money, and as a result of this, the quality of education is going to be provided. Now, members of the House, what have happened in today's argument? Side opposition models have been countered, which is to say that their models is practically not applicable in today's argument, and those models can't help them with today's argument. Why our model has remained? Because we are not advocating for a total ban, but we are saying that government will take over these institutions, which is to say that they will still exist, but there will be a modification, and we see this as our criteria for ban, and that characterizes the system of ban side opposition wants to engage in. Now, the second issue that we're going to win this debate is that we have given the pragmatic benefits involved in this debate. As a result of this, vote side opposition.
The third proposition speaker spent 8 minutes, 7 seconds.
I thank the third proposition speaker for their speech. And now to continue the case for the opposition, I call upon Awei Hu.
Before I move on to the bulk of my speech, one important housekeeping issue. We completely agree with all of the analysis about the government duty and the harm principle. All we think is that the government can best fulfill this duty by allowing for for-profits to exist and in fact expand them, as I'll explain later on in my speech. Three broad areas of clash. First, what is the comparative? Second, do for-profit universities have an incentive to provide good quality education? Lastly, do they have the ability to do so? So first, on what the comparative is. Both teams agree that access to degrees are important, but the entire case is premised on the idea that they can effectively substitute for-profits with non-profits. If they cannot, then they have not proven their burden. The question we asked them from the beginning of this debate, to which they had absolutely no answer, is, will you still ban for-profit universities if students no longer have degrees? They had no answer. So let's be clear, if I can prove that non-profits cannot cover for all the places that for-profits provide within the status quo, then they have no case left. They claim in their policy, we will improve access and train competent staff, we will modify the system, but they never told us where all of these resources come from. We told you that what their policy is doing is replacing the key actor, investors, that make for-profit universities good to begin with. Here are three reasons why for-profit universities uniquely are better. First, because we told you governments have education budgets that are decreasing. We talked about right-wing politicians like Betsy DeVos that do not believe in government intervention and funding. No response. We further talked about austerity in the United Kingdom, in the developed world where they say it was so rich to begin with. Again, no response. So from the beginning of this debate, we told you their policy was untenable. Second of all, we say non-profits neglect disadvantaged communities. They generally want to take in students, but they have no incentive to take in unique niche markets like veterans and minorities because they are not your standard high school graduate that has prerequisite diplomas and knowledge. Therefore, their courses do not cater to them. What for-profits do is provide unique structural lessons that have things like at-night classes that allow for these minorities to access them. For-profits uniquely do this because of their profit incentive and high profits that allow them to cover the cost. Again, structural analysis not dealt with. Third, we say for-profits buy over public universities. And this is the case because it's the easiest way for them to just collate a board of investors and take over a campus that already exists. We talked about how Brickfield's Asian College took over public law colleges in Hanoi, Vietnam. So many community colleges on their side of the house will go bust in the long term because they just don't have economies of scale to expand and run with sufficiently low cost. We think it's investments with billions of dollars that can now come in and take over these high costs on our side of the house. What did they say in response? They first said, we are only talking about developed countries which are rich. So let's be clear, they wouldn't implement this policy in the global south. They wouldn't implement this policy in 3/4 of the world which are developing. I don't think their side has fulfilled the majority burden. This also deals with the example of Germany in the third speaker. Because how many countries are like Germany, which is the highest GDP in their continent? I don't think they can take an isolated example to generalize all for-profit universities. The last attack they said was, but you provide subsidies too. We agree. On both sides of the house, you provide subsidies to poor students. The difference is they need to provide a lot more money when they fund things like the operational cost of funding within a university as well. Unless they're telling me that they'll transfer all of these operational costs onto students, in which case the prices of the non-profit universities on your side of the house will be extremely high either way. So let's be clear, they have no alternative as subsidies are significantly easier for us to do on our side of the house than their side of the house. So even if for-profit universities are not perfect, I would argue that having a degree is infinitely better than not having one. Let's analyze this in the context of some of their concerns. They first talk about debt, but the only debt does not come from going for a university education. When you're jobless, you still need to take a loan to have a house, for instance, to pay your mortgage, to pay for a car. In all of those circumstances, you still have debt. The difference is you now no longer have a job or a fighting chance in the modern economy to earn an income to pay off that debt to begin with. Furthermore, we talked about how issues of school dropouts are not mutually exclusive. To the extent that these individuals don't even get to university on your side of their house, they are permanently a school dropout. So many of the concerns are in fact worse on their side of the house. So let's be very clear. They didn't give us an assertive policy in the first speaker. But if they do not prove this, then the comparative is worse on their side of the house. Second question, on the incentive to provide good quality education. Here are 3 structural reasons why for-profits have an incentive to provide good quality education. And this therefore deals with all of their one-liners about how they don't put money into education or how South Korea is imperfect. Because if there are structural reasons this is the case, then that's the majority of this debate. Firstly, because of free market. We say the free market promotes competition. When you compete with other for-profits, you lower prices and improve quality to attract more students. We say that for-profits cater to a unique demographic, those who are slightly poorer than the average people in their society, which means that they need to cater their prices accordingly, because if not, no one would be able to provide, to access these things. Again, no response. We also told you how the free market has an incentive to maintain a good reputation. From the beginning of this debate, we talked about the power of social media, how posts can go viral, how a chorus of voices can speak up against bad universities and bring their reputation down. This deals with the argument about advertising. Firstly, because it's not unique to for-profit universities, but second of all, when students go in and realize that advertisements have lied to them, they cannot speak up about these kind of things, and therefore those universities cannot sustain themselves within the long term. They will eventually be outcompeted. So when they say there's a recent decline of for-profit universities, that's exactly the free market adjusting itself when people respond to which universities are the best. It is not a reason for us to have an absolute ban on their side of the house. Further, we talk about regulation on our side of the house. We say that governments have a plethora, I'll take a moment, sir, a moment, ma'am, how governments have plethora policies to control for-profits. Before I move on, sure.
Sir, do you provide for the reputation of the schools to be protected against the quality education of the students in the school?
The government does not protect their reputation. They do so on their own accord by having low prices and good quality. We think many investors have incentive to do this. We say the governments can control for-profits in many ways to fulfill the obligation of the harm principle. The final link was never made on their case. Why is this principle only fulfilled through a ban? So honestly, all of the concerns of confusing names or illegal degrees can be responded to with effective regulations, as Obama has done within the last few years. It's not clear why only a ban is able to do these things. But lastly, we say that they are run by human beings. I think debaters have a tendency to monolithically characterize all investors as evil, for-profit-minded individuals. And that's true, that's part of their calculus, but it does not mean that they're evil and they want to destroy the lives of all students. I think what happens in for-profits is a win-win situation, where both the investor and the individual student can benefit. But lastly, on ability. We say that for-profit universities have resources. They bring investors and philanthropists that bring millions of dollars. In contrast to non-profits that use taxpayers' money, we cannot take financial risk on taxpayers' money. We cannot innovate with taxpayers' money because it's too much of a risk to take. This was not dealt with. We told you how the first college to specialize in automotive engineering courses, when the US automobile industry experienced a decline, were for-profit universities like biotech, precisely because they have industry experts much more than any other university which is non-profit, run by tenure systems and alumni boards on their side of the house. This was my second speaker substantive that their side had absolutely no response to. For all of these reasons, it is true that on our side of the house, for-profits have the incentive and the ability to provide good education. But even if it was not perfect, the comparative is worse. For all of these reasons, we should never place limits on the means to your dreams.
The third opposition speaker spends 8 minutes 6 seconds.
the third opposition speaker for their speech. We now move to the 4-minute concluding reply speeches. To deliver the opposition reply speech, I call upon Ryan Wee.
Escaping poverty is always a risk. Maybe the individuals who choose to go to for-profit universities are taking a risk. But we think that what they do know is that they do not take this risk. Many of them, and the vast majority of them, will not be able to find opportunities to uplift themselves in the future. So, when these individuals make the choice to go to for-profit universities, it is both demeaning and cruel for Team Affirmative to say they are making the wrong choice and to take away this option for them. Let's look at the two worlds that emerged by the end of this debate. The world of Team Affirmative was unresponsive to structural trends that exist in the world today. We told you right from first, in the developed world, we are seeing rising austerity. We are seeing right-wing politicians who say we should not be intervening and providing funding for education. In the developing world, governments do not have enough money to provide even their own state-run colleges, and therefore can't even have enough money to take over these for-profit universities. So, I want to be clear what happens in the world of Team Affirmative. Maybe they can implement their models, so there's a nominal government takeover of all universities that are currently for profit. Maybe in the first year, things are okay. Within 2 years, what they will start to see is a huge drop in the quality of education, both in old for-profit universities and state-run colleges, because governments don't have enough money to run good quality courses. Within 5 years, the vast majority of these government takeover universities will shut down, because they simply do not have enough money, they do not have enough money to run courses, to qualify for good degrees, to hire experienced teachers, to provide a good education. So, in the world of Team Affirmative, they leave individuals in the lurch. Already in South Africa, we told you, more than 180,000 people a year, high school graduates who qualify for university, never make it because there aren't enough places in public universities. In the developing world, there are hundreds of millions of individuals who qualify for university but never make it because there are not enough places. In the world of Team Affirmative, they take away the one most important opportunity we can give them. The world of Affirmative did not fulfill their majority burden because they made observations but did not point out trends. We told you about the systemic profit motives that affect how they act, how no-profit university wants to have a bad reputation and therefore will not engage in advertising scandals, will not have random colleges handing out degrees to students who did not exist. In the world of Team Affirmative, people still have debt. Because now they have debt because they have to take a loan for a car or for a house. But now they don't have a job, and that is why they cannot pay off this debt. They have more loan defaults in their world, they have more disempowerment because they do not have a solution. And let's escape the world of Team Affirmative and move very nicely on to the world of Team Opposition. On Team Opposition, we won the principal clash because we told you how we fulfill the government duty best when we ensure that for-profit universities can step in and fill the void and help provide a better education. We fulfilled the majority burden because we told you how the profit motives means that we will have lower prices, we will have high-quality courses, we will have good degrees, we will have experienced teachers, we will have innovation. All of this analysis that came out right from first that was not responded to. In the world of opposition, we improved state-run colleges, which was my substandard that I gave you in second speaker that was not responded to. Because we told you how state-run colleges in our world get improved because the holistic quality of the educational landscape has been affected by the new standards we create. So, in the world of Team Opposition, we had a solution that both provided quality education and improved access. We believe that on our side, we give these people hope. We give them a fighting chance. We help them to survive in the modern economy. And we ensure that the shackles of poverty no longer need to imprison your dreams. We understood that we should not place limits on the means to your dreams. We oppose.
The opposition reply speaker spends 3 minutes 58 seconds.
conclude the case for the proposition and the debate as a whole, I call everyone as a blessing of the honor.
Mr. Speaker, I shall bring up the weaknesses of the side opposition in today's debate and the strength of side opposition. First, we expected side opposition to prove to us why the silent factor as education should be turned into a business, and their failure to do this shows that they're not even ready for today's debate. Secondly, we expected them to prove to us how for-profit universities would accommodate the poor ones in the society. All their arguments were centering on the benefit of for-profit to themselves and not on the poor minority, the general society, and even to the stakeholders involved, meaning that we are also ahead of them in today's debate. Now, today we are unable to counter that different societies, top societies, countries like United Kingdom, countries like Germany, countries like Canada, Netherlands, countries in which a preponderance of institutions of public institutions perform better in terms of education standards. They have not been able to give us a credible response to that, meaning that their case cannot also hold for today's debate. Now, their arguments are not all encompassing, as I've told you, that they protect only the interests of for-profit institutions without considering the interests of the society. And side opposition also argue in the present, the type of what is reigning now, without considering what we have in the future. That if we only consider the present without looking into the future, it means we're not making a rational decision. But the arguments of side opposition in today's debate have gone on to consider both the past, the present, and what we have in the future, meaning we will be ahead in today's debate. Now we gave the House a stance where we told you that for-profit universities over-commercialize education and increase the purpose for which higher institutions are set up. Under that, we gave you a model where we told you that it will be proper for the government to take over these institutions, run them as private ones, and then pay the owners off. We also told you that there will be improved accessibility, where more competent staff will be employed, then infrastructure and the rest of it. And we also told you that it will bring that we're going to ensure a rate of competence for all for-profit staff, such that the competent ones will be taken, and then the less competent ones will be put in places where the qualification and competence will suit, meaning that all stakeholders will be benefiting from the model of the side opposition. Now, the side opposition in today's debate came up to counter this model and told the House that our model cannot work because there is a cut in the budget for education, especially in developing countries. Now, Mr. Chair, the same side opposition came up and told us as a counter model that there is need for us to encourage innovation, there is need for us to employ experienced teachers, there is need for us to put up infrastructure. Should we go on by their model? Is it not the same developing countries that will spend money in doing all these things? Now, in the world of side opposition, we believe that that same money they should use in doing all these things, and which at the end of the day will still bring about a certain cost of education, that we should go on government and encourage government ownership of for-profit universities and colleges, meaning that that counter model cannot hold for today's debate, and the model of side proposition stands. In our legitimacy, we told you that there is limit to rights and freedom, and all that we shouting out is accessibility, that people need to earn a degree. Members of the House, everybody must not go to the university. Someone cannot just be employed in a for-profit university, even when he cannot get up to 24 credits, as is the requirement in the United States of America. Members of the House, there is need for government to take over in order to improve the standard of education, which the for-profit universities are bringing down day by day, meaning that their first response to that means that side proposition will hold in today's debate. Secondly, we told you that the states have a responsibility to provide qualitative and facilitative education, and we've been waiting patiently for side opposition to give us a response to that, and they've been keeping silent, meaning that side opposition will be ahead in today's debate. We also told the House the issue on consent, that these for-profit universities go on giving adverts that are deceitful to students, and all they told us is that it will improve their reputation. On that, we gave them a point of information where we asked them that is the reputation of these institutions better to the quality of education. They are consenting to that point of information, shows side proposition will be ahead in today's debate. Under the pragmatic benefits, we told you it will be safeguarding the future. All their arguments were centered in the present, and our concern for both the present and the future shows we are ahead in today's debate. Furthermore, we told you that there will be expansion of access to education. Expansion of access will encompass both for the rich and for the poor in society. We are not considering for-profit university which favors only the aristocrats in the society. Furthermore, we went on to tell the House that certificates will be issued out of merit, and in doing this, members of the House vote side proposition. Thank you.
The proposition reply speaker spent 4 minutes 5 seconds.